One of the first steps in the morning that you will do for your symptom checker is to take your temperature. For families who do not have a thermometer in their home, we have the ability to provide you with a thermometer that you can pick up when you drop your forms off next Wednesday. To use this thermometer, you're going to push the on button, and the thermometer is going to read LO or low. That's fine. Then place the thermometer in the mouth underneath the tongue, and the lips then should be closed, just like this. You will wait for the thermometer to beep. At that point, it's ready to be read, and it will be in Fahrenheit, so 98.6, and then you'll need to clean that thermometer, place it back in the case, and answer the question on the symptom screener. One thing I really want to stress is the importance of doing that self-screener and being honest about answering the questions. I take my temperature every day. I take my temperature to monitor my own health, but also to protect the health of everyone I work with during the school day. It's important that you do the same thing for each and every family member. The app will be simple to use. I just ask that please be honest and accurate. If you forget, you're going to get a reminder email or text. If you still don't do it when your child comes to school, we'll be pulling them out of class, taking their temperature, and giving you a call to run through the symptom checker. As you can imagine, it kind of defeats the purpose of doing it before you get on the bus and enter the building. So in order to keep our whole community safe, and we're all in, let's do the symptom checker. Don't come to school when you have symptoms. And as a district, we will support you by helping you do some of that learning at home that day. Thank you.
Do I need to wait for Dominic?
No.
Okay. I'd like to call to order a regular meeting of the Board of Education, December 15th, 2020. Dr. Hitchens, will you please call the roll?
Blakely. Here. Dremel.
Here.
Gaspar. Here. Locke.
Here.
Lowe.
Pledge.
Present.
Meadows.
Present.
Meitzler.
Here.
Mrs. Blakely, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That was odd.
Good job at home.
Dr. Hitchens, are there any items removed from or added to the agenda tonight?
There are not.
We do not have any public comments tonight. No one let us know that they wanted to speak. We do have a message from our president of our partner union, Todd Swanson, that will be connected through the minutes, you said,
We'll
correct?
add it to the minutes.
We'll add that to the minutes. So we'll start with board member committee updates. Craig, we'll start with you.
Had a meeting, so I was very excited to attend one. So we updating financial forecasts, looking at various options and stuff. It was a good kind of kickoff meeting for the year. So I'll just kind of leave it at that for right now. So good meeting.
I don't have any updates.
I missed the last insurance committee meeting. Tony, was there anything that we needed to report out?
No, it's funny. I missed the last insurance committee meeting too, but there's nothing of significance to report out.
All right. Aaron.
Nothing from me.
Hall of Honor, nothing to report, but I do have something I wanted to bring up from the BIC meeting. And basically, they were struggling, like everybody else is, about memberships and donations and things like that. And a couple of them are really help a lot in our district, the athletics and the music. And they've taken a hit the last year and a half and this coming year with no galas and stuff. And so I thought, and I talked to Lisa about it, that for anybody that's listening out there or maybe don't get have no kids in the district anymore like myself, you could always go to the Batavia website, go to where it says parents, and then go to where it says parent organization. And there should be a link to go to one of those boosters. And if you've been a member before and want to just join, it would help them out, or donations of any sort, even if it's a small amount. But as we know, the athletics have put a large amount of money into our student body. So is the music and stage and studio, along with Beefy for donations. So I just wanted to try to help them out a little bit, to give them some PR in a way, because they're having a hard time even with their PTOs and everything. So when I reached out to Lisa after the big meeting last week, I said, what do you think of this? And she said it would be a good idea. So you want to add anything?
No, you did perfect. Go to the website, parent organizations, and become a member, or just donate to the other organizations.
Right, even if you have no kids in the district anymore, or you've been a member before, it's always nice just to go about it. So thank you.
Thanks. Sue.
The foundation, I think I mentioned this last time, this kind of touches on what John said. We're doing for the Batavia Foundation for Educational Excellence, honor a teacher. And I believe the first notices go out tomorrow. And, for any amount donation, you can honor a teacher. And you can honor up to 10 teachers, I believe, with your donation. So if you go to bataviafoundation.org, you can get more information about that. And I believe it's every 15th of the month they will send out recognitions. And so for more information, go to that website and you can honor a teacher. So that's about it.
Thanks, Sue. Chris?
Yes, last night I attended my first Building Our Future Together core team meeting as part of the Capital Projects Committee merger with that group. We were inundated with a lot of information that they've gathered over the last year and a half. So still digesting some of that information, but I'm looking forward to working with that group. I think there's a lot of important work that they're doing.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Next item on our agenda is our consent agenda, which is our opportunity to pass a number of routine business items, all of which are detailed in the board book, and pass them all with one vote. So Mr. Pierce will take us through the consent agenda.
Absolutely. 4.1 is the approval of the November 17th, 2020 meeting minutes. 4.2 and 4.3 is the approval of the December 7th, 2020 special meeting and closed session minutes. 4.4 is the personnel report. 4.5 is our payroll and bills. 4.6 is the destruction of our closed session recordings from June 18th, 2019. 4.7 is the approval of the 2021 paper bid. And lastly, 4.8 is the approval of the consent agenda.
Any items for clarification or removal tonight? Then I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Moved. Second.
Moved by Meitzler, second by Blakely. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, there's a delay. I keep forgetting. All right, consent agenda passes as presented. Next items on our agenda are our reports. I will pass that over to Dr. Hitchens.
Okay, our first two reports are our monthly reports about FOIA requests and our treasurer reports. I'd be happy to entertain any questions about those, but if not, we can talk about the policy report. It's listed as a report, so next month we will bring it back for a vote. So this is the month where you would look at those policies and tell me if you have anything to recommend. Those 3 policy changes are really just incorporate a new category of funds, and they're fiduciary funds. These are all press recommended policies, and the procedures that are listed don't require a vote. We just show you the ones that we will be modifying this month. So questions about the 3 policy changes? These are what I would consider compliance. So something was created, we have to change our policy to match that new category of funds. So there's not much we can do to be creative with this policy. So if you don't have any feedback, I'll just bring it back next month and I'll put it in the consent agenda for your approval. Great. And then next I will turn it over to Brad and Ming for Portrait of a Graduate.
Great, thank you very much. Board, we're here tonight to talk to you about the Portrait of a Graduate process to make sure that the board understands what this process is. And we're really interested in any of your feedback and how you might, as a board member, want to participate in this process. So really, Portrait of a Graduate might be a little bit of a misnomer because this process really could be called Portrait of a First Grader, Portrait of a Seventh Grader, Portrait of a sophomore in high school. And it really is about what we as a district value and what we as a community value for our kids. If you think about what you want for your own children, whether they're in schools now or they're out of school, you probably think about things other than simplifying rational expressions in Algebra 2. You probably think about things like for my own kids who are sophomores in high school, when I think about what I want them to become, I want them to be independent. I want them to be able to communicate with a variety of different people, whether they agree with them or not. I want them to be kind to others and to show empathy. Those are the types of kids that my wife and I want to raise. And we're doing that with the help of Batavia Public Schools. So those are my sophomores. Ming, you have 2 4-year-olds.
Yeah, and when I think about the conversations that I'm having with their teachers, the first question I usually ask is, are they being a good friend? And how are they advocating for self and others? And are they being kind and considerate to the people around them and their surroundings? So it's really focused on developing them as a whole child and not just the academic part of them.
And that's really what the Portrait of a Graduate process is. It asks the community a very simple question is, what do we want from our children? Like, what do we want to instill in them? And while we're in a pandemic and things are very weird, it might be a different time to do this, but we actually think it's the right time to do this work. And why now is because this is really a commitment that we have come to a point with Batavia Public Schools and our teachers union where we need to have clarity about where is the community's focus for our kids. Whether we call these SEL, social emotional skills, soft skills, life skills, we need to know what the community values and wants for their children so that we can help be a partner to them in helping to instill those behaviors and dispositions. So right now is the right time for us to get the community's pulse. We think we can accomplish this process given the constraints of the pandemic. It's also people have less to do right now and can participate in this process more fully. And we'll explain a little bit more about what this process entails. We want to go to the second slide here. This is really the question that we'll be asking our community is, are our students well prepared to thrive in this modern environment? And really, this is about looking forward. Right now, We are ushering in kids who will be with us. Some of them are starting at 3 years old. They'll be with us until they're 18 years old. So we have a long time with many of our students. And with a community like Batavia that's so supportive with low mobility, we have a long time where we can be with these students and help to reinforce their parents' values and what they want for their own children. So we really have a nice example of this. I've been talking to a lot of parents lately about their experiences with school. And one of the things that struck me in my conversation with parents is they are having a bird's eye view of their children's education like they've never had before, right? So they are seeing their kids interact, whether it's through a Google Meet or the work that they're doing, and they're helping them with that. They are getting a bird's eye view to Batavia Public Schools and the education that we can offer. And their comments have really struck me is that one of the comments that was something that I heard from multiple parents was when we started in the fall, this was really a train wreck in my house, right? And they said, this is really hard. Or last spring, they were reflecting on last spring. And they're like, I'm amazed at the perseverance that my student has started to develop through this process. Our kids are adaptable, they learn, and they were commenting about some of these skills. Perseverance is a good example of a value that a parent or a community might want to instill in their student and their child. So that's a good example that I'm hearing from parents already about things that we're helping to nurture in our students. And really, this question is about one of the board's goals, and that is partnership, right? So this is all done in partnership with parents. And we want to make sure that we are listening to the community before we decide on what those soft skills, life skills, or SEL skills are that Batavia Public Schools will have the opportunity to focus on with our students in their time here. So we want to make sure that we are listening to the community through this process, a portrait of the graduate, and that we really hear what they're saying and focus on a few things. Focus is a key part of this process because our teachers are doing a million things in our classrooms right now to teach these skills. They teach self-regulation, they teach perseverance, they teach grit, they teach responsibility. They're teaching all of these things right now, and they're feeling overwhelmed. And our commitment to SEL isn't going to stop because we're overwhelmed. But it would be great to focus on those things that the community really valued and do a really good job. And as someone who supports both administrators and teachers, it would be great to be able to support our staff in teaching how to do some of these things with their students. So that really is the focus of the Portrait of a Graduate process. On the next slide, you can see just a couple of examples of other schools and districts. I think Stevenson, Ming said, just completed this process as well. So these are some examples of the types of things that might come out in our community conversation, and then the board would approve these as kind of a focus for our Portrait of a Graduate. So an example on Indian Prairies, you can see their community, through their community dialogue, really felt that flexibility and adaptability was one of the key skills that they wanted their students to leave the 204 system with. That may or may not be what the Batavia community wants to focus on, and that's really what we'll find out through this process. So we know that social and emotional skills are not going away. They're really important to both our staff, our community, and our students' future success. But we need to know what that focus is, and then we can build upon that and build in our systems so that each kid gets this. Not every home is the same. Not every parent is the same. So we want to make sure that we leave room for parents to do what they do, but also support them in that way as well.
On this next slide is a quick 1-minute video about the evolution of the desk from 1980 to 2014, and I think the video speaks for itself. kind of crazy, right? In just a short 34 years, how much things have changed. I remember being a little girl, and one of my chores was to go out and get the newspaper every morning and bring it in. And I don't know any kids who get the newspaper out, because if anytime you want it, you can just open your phone and there's 5 apps that do what we want with flipping through a newspaper. We have heard of all of these companies: Uber, Airbnb, Facebook, Instagram, Netflix, maybe Alibaba. And maybe we've used most of these. But what's really interesting about each of these companies is that they're the dominant in their field, yet they don't own any of the property. So Uber is the largest taxi company, but they own no cars. Airbnb, largest accommodation, but they own no real estate. Facebook, they own no content. Instagram owns no cameras. Netflix does not lay any cables, and Alibaba has no inventory. And what's even more astonishing is none of these companies existed 20 years ago. So our students don't even know a life before when people would have product in a warehouse or in a big parking lot. And so we just want to make sure that as we're customizing to what our students need, that we're keeping up with what their world is like. So here are the top 10 skills in 2020. And just from 2015 to 2020, there's been a lot of change. For example, in 2015, the number 10 item was creativity. Now that's bumped up to number 3. And at least 5 or more of these are focused on social emotional learning skills or life skills or soft skills, whatever we want to call them. But they need to have strong self-awareness to be able to work with others, manage others. And this is according to the World Economic Forum. So we know that these are skills that our students really need. According to CASEL, and they're a major organization in the research around social emotional learning, you'll notice in the middle is that the focus is around the 5 components of social emotional learning, and that it really starts in the classroom, and that this is a place where our students can build their authentic voice, where adults can give them agency, and we're practicing these skills. And then it continues to move out into the schools, the families, and the communities where we form these really authentic partnerships. And that our students can start practicing, like, how do I be a nice friend? How do I ask for something to share? And that they can continue to do that, not just within the safety of the 4 walls of a classroom, but even out with other areas, other communities, and other people. And then for social emotional learning really to be successful is to infuse it in our students' daily lives. It's not just this one 15-minute lesson of, hey, remember, it's important to persevere, but when we're doing a lesson with reading, we can talk about how the main character persevered through a challenge. Or when they're solving a math problem, how did you persevere to get to this conclusion? When you're working on a science experiment, how did you persevere to try different types of experiments to get to what you want your result to be? So it's really a cross-curricular and not just a standalone item. So here's a short video of other districts who have really put a focus on social emotional learning and the results that they got from it.
I'm a data guy, I like numbers, and we have a lot of evidence that social emotional learning has made a difference.
We had a graduation rate of 62%. Last year, we put up a record-breaking 84%.
Over the last 5 years, our expulsions have been cut in half.
We were suspending about 13,000 days of out-of-school suspension. We were 10 times the average for any school district in Ohio. And within that first year alone, we were able to reduce our out-of-school suspensions by 55%.
Attendance rates went up. We know that attendance is directly correlated to academic improvement and achievement, but it also had other outcomes that were extremely important, which is students feeling more connected to schools, educators having to think outside the box, helping students overcome some of the challenges that are in their life.
There's an 11-to-1 return on investment. So for every $1 invested in programming around social emotional learning, we're seeing that they're saving $11 on remedial programs, dropout prevention. So there's lots of reasons that people are coming to the conclusion that this is something that we need to be prioritizing.
So attendance and expulsion are not through the roof in Batavia, but what they talked about of students feeling more connected to schools, adults thinking outside of the box, we are really conscious of creating that emotional engagement, that happy place for our students to be. And with this continuous focus, our students will only get happier and happier.
This slide really shows kind of the jumble of things that we're already focused on and how this process can help give us focus. This is not an initiative, a new initiative. This is building on work that we've already started as a district that I think our teachers take a lot of pride in the work that they're doing around social and emotional learning. But this process is to really hear from our community and then give us focus and systemness to our social and emotional work so that we have a guaranteed curriculum around social and emotional learning that our community can support, that kids would see out in our community. So this process will let us know what we're going to do, and then we can build in supports for our staff and for our students. And we think this work really takes the community's effort behind it. Some of us are old enough to remember Character Counts, and Character Counts is a good example of how the community bought into the pillars of Character Counts. It wasn't just something that you saw in schools hanging on a banner, but it's something that you might have seen at the library, that the Park District used, that the City Council used. And that's the type of community involvement that we're looking for in this process, is to really hear from the community about what they value for their students, and then to have them adopt some of the same language and skill teaching that we would do here. We'll get down now to the nuts and bolts of this process so that the board can understand and give us any feedback. But really it's about listening to the community. We want to, these are a list of the different community groups that we would target. Our plan right now, unless we hear from board members that they're interested in different ways, we would plan to target certain people for invitations and invite them to the process, but then also allow kind of an open invitation to the community for a certain number of slots so that people who are interested in this work, who have something to say, who have something to learn through this process can also be involved. So it wouldn't just be invitation, it would be some open volunteer slots as well. But we do want a cross-section of our community, and we'll look to our partners in order to help us to identify some of those people for this process. We would like the board to take an active role in this, and that can be what each board member determines is best for them, right? So they can be a participant in this process and join us in our meetings. They could be an observer to this process. They could get updates from us. It really is up to the board member, but we'd like to invite all 7 board members to be a part of this process in the way that feels best to them. And again, our purpose is to learn, and we plan to do that learning on the next slide in a series of meetings that we would start to plan this winter and then go into the spring. This is a short-term commitment for people. This is 3 to 4 meetings with our cross-section of people, and due to the realities of getting people together, we would do some learning together online, and then we would do breakout groups, small group focus sessions, and then individual phone calls in order to get the feedback of the group. But each session is planned around a different learning topic, and then people need some time to reflect and think about how that impacts what they really value for our community. And then we need to hear from each of those individuals, whether it's in a small group or individually, to get their feedback. We'll process that feedback and then present it back to the group at the next meeting. So it's kind of an evolution each meeting where we're kind of refining down what we're learning, how that impacts our decisions, and what our final recommendation would be. The board's role would be to hear the recommendation. They would be, many of you might be observers or participants in that process, but the board would be asked to kind of approve that, and that would probably be closer to early summer when we would have that process complete. So it's a short-term process, but we want to get a number of people involved. In typical districts, there's about 40 individuals involved in that process, just so you have a variety of voices representing the community. The board's role in this would be to, we hope, support and encourage community involvement in this short-term process, to participate in some way, depending on their interest or what they'd like and what they see is appropriate, to consider the recommendation from the group and to adopt the areas of focus. And again, the board could look at, oftentimes when you get large groups of people, it's hard to narrow the focus, and you look at some of them and they started cramming words together, and the board can be kind of that ultimate decision maker around what our areas of focus are. Ming and I would be facilitating this process, mostly Ming. She's a great facilitator, so we have in-house facilitation for this process. The group that has kind of pioneered this, Patel for Kids, has all of their materials and kind of meeting outlines out there for the public to use. We feel like we can facilitate this in-house, and then we would build from there. The real time and money is in, once the community lets us know what their focus is to build in high quality, authentic experiences around those skills for our students. And that would start in pre-K and then build through grade 12. That's what's going to take time and effort of our staff, but I think they will be excited with the focus, the clarity, and the systemness that we can bring to guarantee all of our students have these characteristics. We'll take any questions that you have and any feedback that you have.
Well, I'm going to say that I'm really excited for this. As soon as I heard a little bit about it, I didn't know much, so I did a little bit of research. And I think this is, like you said, it's a really good way to give a good framework around things that are already happening from a social emotional side and from other things kind of individual teachers are kind of working on. The interesting that I also find is it's also a way of kind of helping the community and the parents know that these are things you're focusing on in a realistic terminology that they may understand more than kind of educational academic type speak, like social emotional learning. People might not know what that is. And I, for one, am happy to participate in any way that you guys might be able to use my skills and services or whatever you want to call it. So I'm really excited for it. So I appreciate the thought process, and I appreciate the only thing I said is this is a long-term commitment, right? Because you got to kind of get through those, first grade, kindergarten, all the way through to really know your success level. So I just wanted to make sure that, from a board perspective, and this is a long-term commitment to this ideal, not just we can try it for a few years and see if it works, because we may not know, the way I'm kind of looking at it. So, but thank you.
Aaron has been a great kind of sounding board for us as we've tried to navigate this process and understand how the community and the board might react to it. And we're really excited, I think, about the potential, but you're right, this is a long-term commitment. We have a long-term commitment to fostering these skills in our students, and it's not always easy. And I think that it has to be developmentally appropriate as well, right? So Ming has a great example of talking about responsibility that I'll ask her to share, because it really struck me as kind of solidifying what this looks like in action.
Yeah, so if we were to choose responsibility as one of our top skills, in the early elementary grades, it might be responsibility for our own supplies or responsible for our surroundings, of picking up the trash. And then as we move to later elementary and middle school, maybe it's more about responsibility of communicating to my teacher about my missing assignments, being responsible for turning assignments on time. And then as you go into high school, there's that scary driver's ed where they're on the road. And that's a huge responsibility, as well as their social media, their digital footprint, and being responsible with that. So with the focus, like what Brad is saying, we can really hone in from early elementary, EC, all the way through high school.
Awesome. Chris, did you have something you wanted to share?
I did. Thank you. First, I wanted to say that I am also really excited about this program. I think that it is a good idea for us to have a good idea of where we're going before we choose how to get there. So I think having a target end goal will help us focus. So I like that. I also think that there's a potential for overlap between the work that's being done here and the work that's being done for our Building Our Future Together. I think if we're going to come up with a master plan, we should have the idea of what the ideal student looks like when crafting that plan, so that we can meet the needs of that student next year and in the future.
Thanks, Chris.
Oh, and I'm willing to help out in any way that you guys need help. So,
thank you, Chris. Anyone else?
Lisa and I had a brief conversation today about this topic, and it's not, this topic of SEL is not the newest buzz thing. This is here to stay, and if anything illustrates that more, it's this top 10 skills. Because if you look at it, yes, they might be in a different order, but only 4 are different. And to me, active listening and emotional intelligence, it's just getting bigger. The topic is bigger. So that illustrates why this is so important in this district.
And I would just like to make a comment from sort of a historical standpoint. This board, the entire time I've sat on it, has been very focused on educating the entire student. We have talked repeatedly about measures of success that are not just academic. And that is actually some of the work that we've done that I think we've taken some of the most pride in. We do well academically, but we're really focused on really helping our students grow into just responsible adults with a lot of character. And so this is just continuing that work. And again, that's why I'm always proud and always excited about the work that we do, because I think we are bigger than just one small target of academics. And I've got 6 other board members who step up and say, I want to be part of this, I want to help, and I want to support this. And so that's terrific. I have a feeling that all 7 of us in one way or the other will want to be working on this project. So I'm sure you will hear from all of us, but definitely reach out to, I'm assuming, Brad and Ming to talk about how you can get involved in this project. This is going to be awesome work. Thank you guys. And Aaron, thanks for being the board member to help facilitate that. All right.
Thanks.
Financial forecast.
That one.
It's our
we'll turn
fave,
over to
Tony.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Now, Tony, yay.
Yeah, so Ming is going to help me display some aspects of this as we carry through the financial forecast. You'll note that it's in a bit different format than you've seen in the past. I hope this format is more helpful to you in terms of communicating all the information, but to do it in a clear and concise way. But if you have feedback, I'd certainly entertain it and to make other improvements. Key assumptions that we use each year in this financial forecast are very similar to prior years, and there's some things, though, that are changing, some things that we can expect. And I'll note those in section 1.3 here, the factors bearing on the district's future. We do use the student enrollment trends and projections very heavily in our financial forecast in all of our planning. And so we did have an anomaly this year with the pandemic, but we do anticipate that student enrollment is going to return to the levels that we had anticipated it to be in 2022, but also continuing to decline at a roughly 2% rate as birth rates in Kane County and the collar counties of Chicago have been declining in recent years, and that is beginning to percolate through our schools. State funding sources are probably going to be met with challenge given the pandemic and the strain that it's placed on the state of Illinois. We just recovered from the Great Recession, and we don't anticipate that this will put, as I mentioned, added strain on the state. We don't expect any more money coming from the state, essentially, in this forecast for 2 reasons. One, Illinois doesn't have any more to give, and 2, our student enrollment is declining. So, we really can't expect anything more from the state. There's a chance that we could actually expect less, but that would be pure speculation. So by and large, this forecast does anticipate very level state funding. We will fulfill the outlet mall tax rebate in 2022. which is exciting because that will yield a savings of almost $500,000 each year moving forward. And so, as you may recall, as an incentive to enhance that development, the board did commit to a $3.2 million tax rebate for the owners of the outlet mall, and so that will end here soon in 2022. Also, the extension of Batavia TIF 1 will end in 2025, so that is a 35-year TIF that will end, and that is expected to bring in roughly about $650,000 worth of new revenue in 2025 and 2026, and so we're looking forward, of course, to that. Our collective bargaining agreements end with the BEA and BESPA in 2023 and 2025, respectively, and then after those contracts end, we assume that salaries increase at CPI. They are increasing at more than CPI, as is noted in the key assumptions, to comply with the terms of those contracts. And so our plan for those contracts historically has been to match those with our revenues. And so moving forward, we do anticipate that those contracts will do exactly that. And really good news for taxpayers, too. In 2026, the district will pay off all of its outstanding debt, which is about $9 million that we pay toward that each year. And so that is something certainly that is very exciting. Section 2.1, we note key facts. And so with all these assumptions and factors that I just mentioned, this forecast looks promising, actually, in the sense that it does anticipate for the next 5 years that the district will have a balanced budget and be able to afford its expenses. However, there is one major caveat, which I'll get to in just a moment. You'll note here in section 2.2 that revenues are slightly higher than expenditures in each of these years, and then the yellow line that draws across is level, meaning that fund balances are expected to remain at their levels throughout the duration of this forecast. So if all of the assumptions come true, we can expect balanced budgets. However, and that carries forward status quo, meaning that basically we're doing the same things that we're doing now, with one exception that we note here further down in section 3.3, and really that's seeing that we're experiencing declining enrollments, we do need to adjust staffing. And so to make that yellow line level, nice and level, we do need to reduce approximately 4 full-time FTE teaching staff and maybe 2 FTE support staff. And there can be combinations thereof, but roughly that's about the numbers that we would need to balance things out. And that would need to start in 2022, because as we know, the most powerful force in the universe is compounding interest, as Albert Einstein once said. And so the more staff we have, those costs creep up rather quickly. And even a change that would seem as insignificant as this, 4 teachers and 2 support staff, does compound. And so we'll have to keep a close eye on those things moving forward. I'll just briefly run through the revenues and expenditures, and just to give some key highlights from each of those. In section 4.1, the new money that we do get in this forecast is primarily going to come from property taxes. And so, as historically has been the case here in Batavia and the Tri-Cities and certainly the more affluent areas of Illinois in general, schools are funded by local property taxes primarily, and that's the case here. So all of our new revenue essentially is going to primarily come from that source. Earnings on investments took a significant hit here with the Fed lowering the short-term borrowing rate. And so just as we were able to get away from tax anticipation warrants because we have enough cash on hand to actually pay our bills for the duration of the school year, interest rates, of course, went down. And so we're not earning much money on that cash when we do happen to have it, but we do anticipate that it will recover some in future years. In section 4.3, unrestricted grants and aid, that is the state's general state aid, or the EDF, the evidence-based funding formula, and we anticipate that, as I mentioned earlier, to stay level. That money isn't restricted in any form. It's given to us by the state. It does have some purposes that we do need to cover and demonstrate that we're properly funding, but generally speaking, we can spend that in any legal fashion that is dictated by school code. Restricted grants and aid that are noted in section 4.4 are categoricals that we call them. They're generally reimbursements for transportation, reimbursements for special education, those sorts of things. We do anticipate those to remain unchanged. The reason being is that, again, it's very difficult to predict what will happen, and also seeing declining enrollments, there will be some reductions in those reimbursements because theoretically we'll spend less, but there's also inflationary pressures in terms of economics, which will increase. And then there's the prorations, with the state health. And so essentially we're assuming that those monies will stay unchanged. But again, is speculation otherwise. Section 4.5 is food services. Leave those unchanged too because money that comes in for food service is spent on food service. It pretty much offsets itself and so isn't necessarily material for the purposes of the forecast. Section 4.6, tuition fees, other, almost $3 million that we anticipate primarily is student fees, is also rental income, and some other areas like TIF surpluses and otherwise. That money is actually going to expected to decrease and stay relatively low to the current years for the next 5. Isn't expected to increase much at all. Federal aid will actually go down here again too in section 4.7, and that's because a lot of the money that we're expending in the current fiscal year is carryover from last year because we weren't able to actually spend it because of the lockdown last spring. And so once that takes place, that money should stay stable, but is subject also to student enrollments. And also the trend in recent years has been that the low income rate has been declining in Batavia, and so that would make us eligible for less title funds and in particular federal money. So that should stay relatively stable, but can decline. In section 5, in expenditures and salaries in particular, I mentioned that earlier. We're assuming CPI where we can when it comes to salaries, with the exception of our contracts with BESPA and BEA. Benefits in section 5.2. Luckily, we've been able to rein in our spending on medical insurance because otherwise we'd be in real trouble. This forecast would not be a nice level yellow line. It would be plunging rather quickly because prior to that intervention, we were seeing increases upwards of 12%, in some cases as high as 18% in terms of medical insurance premiums. And so far, in the last year, we've been able to rein that in, and we do expect that it will remain steady at about roughly 3% on average over the course of 5 years. And so if things go well, we might have a bad year or two here and there, but that average is expected to be, roughly speaking, 3%. Purchase services we rely very heavily on in section 5.3 for transportation, food service, and custodial. So we don't have as many staff as the average school district in the area. We can expect roughly CPI increases there going forward because of inflation. And the same for section 5.4 in supplies. In section 5.5, we note capital outlay. That icon there is a little misleading because our typical transfers to capital projects, the way the software captures this, couldn't quite capture the way we do that. But we've been increasing our allocations to capital outlay by roughly 10% a year, and this plan does assume that that is going to continue moving forward, which, as has been noted a couple on occasions already this evening, that in terms of building our future together, we've got some work to do when it comes to maintaining our facilities. We took a break from maintaining our facilities for many years to get through the Great Recession, and we're still paying the price for that. And we've still got much work that's left to be done. So we need to continue to invest there. Other objects is basically other expenditures that aren't otherwise classified in those in the sections that I've laid out. They include tuition, in particular for students who have special education needs. There's contingency in those amounts, and then also debt payments as well. So for the duration of the forecast, it varies from year to year, but is similar to the current. But after 2026, other objects will be significantly less because we won't have bond payments. But of course, those aren't necessarily factored into this forecast because those are outside of the operational funds. But that certainly will help things overall for the average taxpayer. Be happy to entertain any questions or thoughts that you might have on this format and whether or not it's helpful to you. I should note that this format isn't the brainchild of myself. This was Forecast 5, the forecasting software that we use is a modified version of what they've come up with, and I thought it was interesting and helpful, so we decided to use it.
It's a nice format.
Good job.
Board member question, comments? laid out very clearly, very easy to understand, and it's all so much better news than we heard for years, Tony. So we're actually really happy to hear from you these days.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Again, we are effusive in our appreciation for the financial stewardship that you have shown this district. All right, I think that is everything for reports. We have one item on our agenda for action. Is that Brad?
Yep.
Dr. Newkirk?
The keeper of the calendar, Dr. Newkirk.
Yep. So school calendar, it's that time of year again. We originally had this under reports, but feedback from parents at the Batavia Interschool Council, as well as the staff members that we interact with through the BEA to get feedback on the school calendar was all pretty positive. So we did move that to action in case the board wants to act on it tonight. So we didn't assume that you wanted to, and we can happily push it to next month. But because feedback was positive, we wanted to give you that as an option. Just a few little highlights from the calendar from next year. It doesn't look a whole lot different than our current school calendar, which is good. Small changes are often met with better reception. Because of the function of calendars, the calendar does reset a little bit, so we are starting a little bit later in the month of August, which is kind of similar to where we started this year, based on us starting a little bit later due to the pandemic. See, we have a little bit of a wonky Christmas break or winter break next year, so those are the only highlights that I would think to point out. But I'd be happy to take any of your questions, and then the board can decide whether you would want to vote on it tonight to put it out for the public
Brett,
or not.
can you just do the really quick overview of what the process is so that the public and the board members are reminded why we are comfortable bringing this for a vote tonight?
We try and seek feedback from a number of different groups. I start with the teachers because they have a highly vested interest in this, and as a unit district, people have different views on what a calendar would be. So we presented them with two different options related to the school calendar. We hold a focus group of those teachers to get feedback and clarification. We take it to our administrative council for any feedback or recommendations as well. And then to the Batavia Interschool Council. They've been a good sounding board for us. Many of the people on that group have been there for a number of years, so they've seen this a number of times, and they represent their schools very well and are able to provide sound feedback. Many of them have kids at many different levels and kind of think about the system as a whole as well. So we present it to those three groups to get feedback on as representatives of their stakeholder group, and we move from there.
And we recognize that no calendar is going to please everybody, and one of the reasons why we don't open it up for just general comment is because we would get so many comments that there would be no way to quantify or qualify those comments, which is why we've chosen these groups to sort of guide our work here. Any board member questions on this calendar?
I have one. Brad, would the June 3rd be the date for the 5 snow days?
Yes.
Okay.
And we're hoping that with our experience with remote learning, that snow days may just turn into remote learning days, but we'll see how that process is reformatted after the pandemic.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or concerns? All right, then I would entertain a motion to adopt the 2021-22 calendar as presented.
Moved.
Second.
Moved by Meadows, second by Meitzler. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you. We have a new calendar. That is actually everything on our agenda for tonight, so I'll hand it over to Dr. Hitchens for administration comments.
I'm glad to go first because I'm going to say the thing that everybody is thinking, and I'm just going to take it right off of your plates right now. But I just hope that everybody has the most wonderful, relaxing break. It's so deserved for our staff and our students and our families who've been so kind and gracious this semester and flexible. And enjoy your break. That's it.
All right, we'll start remote. Sue.
Just pretty much what Lisa said. Everyone have a wonderful break. Enjoy their time with families if they can, and just relax and try to get some enjoyment with your family. So have a good break.
Thanks, Sue. Chris?
Same thing. Have a great break, and hopefully we can start the new year with some good news.
Gaspar?
Tony, as always, thank you. I know you've done a lot of improvement on this and been open on it, so I appreciate it for all you've done for the financial report. So, Brad and Ming, thank you for your presentation today. As always, I've got to think on it, but there's some aspects I agree with, some I'm not sure on, but we'll be in touch. So, again, I want to thank everyone for the emails. As you know, we're in a tough spot still. Do we come to school? Do we not go to school? And so on. But I think we're working it all out. But I just want to make sure everybody understands that the administration and everyone is taking it at heart. So I appreciate that. The staff members that have been emailing, I know that's been taken at heart too. So I want you to think that it's not being not heard, that we do take it all serious. And just like the calendar, you're not going to please everyone. So it's something that no one anticipated this throughout since last spring. So I mean, that's and with a new board coming in next year, I mean, no one projected this. So I just want everybody to know that we do hear it, we do read it, and it's just a no-win situation. And again, thanks everyone at RJAC for getting all the information, and I appreciate all that and the phone calls. And I, like everywhere else, I just want you all to have a safe Christmas, holiday break, whatever you celebrate, and be healthy, safe, and be smart. Thank you.
John? Aaron?
Everything John said.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for not repeating it verbatim.
Yeah, that's right. So stay well into the new year. Stay safe and enjoy the break.
Thanks, Aaron. Tina?
Yeah, same. Happy holidays. Brad, Lisa, Steve, Tony, Ming, thank you for your extremely endless hard work that's been happening. I wish you guys a peaceful break, a rest.
Yes. Thanks, Tina. Craig?
Only things I kind of had were basically echoed by everybody else, so for that I'm going to say ditto. And then the only other thing I was going to say is, while I fully am cognizant of the fact that the school year is not over, but the calendar year is, I am going to personally celebrate the end of 2020 while understanding it's really not going to change on January 1st. So, I appreciate, from what I've personally seen between, like John said, the letters, and the one thing I get out of all the emails and the information that we get is just how much everybody cares. And that's what's the underlying. They might be irritated, they might be frustrated, they might have different opinions and thoughts about how things should be done, but everything's about a level of care, either the care for the teachers, the care for the kids, or the care for the community. And I personally appreciate that. And I also appreciate that you can read in almost every little info we get, or text or email we get, is, I recognize this is like a no-win situation. And so I just want to let you know that as a board member, I appreciate that recognition, and that we are having conversations and we are talking and we're trying to figure out and navigate this. And so I appreciate the parents, the teachers, and the students for everything they've done this year, and everything they will do next year as well. So thank you.
I am just going to leapfrog off of one thing Craig said, and that is, we are incredibly lucky to live in this very caring community and to work in this school district. I mentioned this earlier, and I will continue to say this. I could not be more proud to be a member of this district. I could not be more proud to have the honor of working, volunteering. And our community cares, and our teachers are so passionate, and our students are so worth it. So I just thank you, and we will continue doing this work together the best that we can. That is it for our meeting tonight. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Meitzler, second by Meadows. All in favor?
All right.
Any opposed? Anyone want to stick around? All right, we are adjourned.
Thanks.